Right. Oh, it's something. Like four. Yeah. Hey, the derby. Or dog racing.
You're welcome.
Oh, cool.
Okay, we'll try it. Hello.
Hello, young lady.
We can't print off my talk today. It's right on my computer today. We'll see what happens. Oh, yeah, maybe I should give you those right away.
Give them.
Thank you, brother.
You're pretty good.
Okay, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So today we're going to talk about persecution. Yay! Preparing for persecution, which we know eventually will come here, but we've been pretty fortunate so far. In case my computer dies, let me go down and you can write down these scriptures so you can tell me what we're reading because I don't have a paper copy. All right, we will eventually read Matthew 5, 10 through 12. I should write this down too. Grab my cord today and I have to do it. I got 38%. So we will eventually read Matthew 5, 10 through 12. 2 Timothy 2:12. John 15, 8 through 20.
John, what?
John 15, 18 through 20. 1 Peter 4. Okay.
You quit on school, ain't you, girl?
1 Peter 4, 12 through 14.
Both of them?
1 Peter 4, 12 through 14. Romans 8, 35 through 37.
12 is back.
Okay.
1 Peter 12, no, 4, 12 to 14. 4,
What was wrong again?
12 to 14.
Romans 8, 35 through 37. Did I? I'm sorry.
So 1 Peter 12 to 14. 1 Peter 12. No, 1 Peter 4.
Peter 4, 12 through 18.
Right. 12 through 14.
14.
12 through 14.
Tell you what, I'll write them down and read them all again. I'm trying to write and read, it's not working, I guess. Right. So Matthew 5, 10 through 12. 2 Timothy 2:12. John 15, 18 through 20. 1 Peter 4, 12 through 14. Romans 8, 35 through 37. Acts 14, 22. Matthew 10, 22. Philippians 1, 29. I don't think I read some of that. Philippians 1, 29. I'm just giving them to you early in case my computer dies.
Wait.
But I'll have them.
Acts 14, 22, Matthew 10, 22.
Mm-hmm. Philippians 1, 29. 2 Corinthians 12, 10. 2 Corinthians 12, 10, and then Hebrews 11, 35 through 38. In case my computer poops out.
Let me last one again.
Hebrews 11, 35 through 38. Okay. We're improvising since our printer's not connecting today with my talk. That's okay. It happens, right? Technology. Yay. Okay, so preparing for first. Nope. You have the first one pulled up, right? Okay, please. All right. So today we're going to talk about persecution and how to prepare for it. Before we start, we're going to watch a video. Guys, wait. Oh, wait, no, you're right.
Is he right?
Yeah.
You can apologize.
Hey, you guys are that cute. Okay, good. You know, being a Christian, it's not always easy.
The things that I've been through, they're hard to talk about.
There's been constant persecution.
Yeah, this is the first time I've had to talk about this, so just kind of nervous. It's a lot. Yeah. Just feel it for God. There's consequences no one tells you about. First time I realized I was under persecution was June of 2017. I walked into church and it was freezing. I asked them what the temperature was, and they said it was 71. I asked them to raise it up to something a little warmer, and they wouldn't.
I remember walking into the sanctuary on Sunday morning. Some families, this stupid family, was sitting in my spot, the spot I've been sitting in for years. And so I looked around, I had to find some other spot. I had to sit in some other chairs off. And then just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I was handed communion. And it was stale. It was awful. It tasted like cardboard. And I look at the label and it's not even dairy. I'm not allergic, but I could have been. You know, I could have been.
Just last week, I wasn't greeted when I walked through the doors to the church. We started worshiping, and I looked at the screen. I couldn't read the words. The text was too small. Like I'm not perfect. 2020. One of my eyes is. I got a headache. And came to worship, and it's so impossible. How am I supposed to worship if I can't even read the words on the screen? So the sermon goes long. All my friends are already at Applebee's. Missed the cue.
These are the first few from school.
Every Sunday, they forgot to put my birthday in the bulletin. He's in there. Me.
The family is all dressed up, and we stop when we get in to take a photo together. And it's really pretty photo booth. But then I open Instagram to take a photo, and it won't load because the Wi-Fi is too slow.
I'm so glad I be in a place where I'm convicted.
I sneezed, and they just said, bless you. Just took God out of bless you.
Sports schedule.
It's happy holidays. Where's the Christmas?
The cell service, you kidding?
Who does that?
Bring my kids to you. You play poker, I come back,
When the things
the kids still. But what is he doing?
Oh, we get this week's golf course clean. This is having something new coming. We can live for 6 months.
And this is
Like that.
Good.
Why?
I found that, like, I have to share that. Hey, what did you think about this video?
And that's what's wrong with
No, Cindy called it, it's satire, obviously, right? It's making fun of the American church. Oh my God, the first guy acted upset because the church leader did not turn the temperature higher than 71. And they also forgot to put his birthday in the bulletin. The second guy was upset that communion elements were not gluten-free. Really? Bring your own. We may think this video is funny and ridiculous, but it's pretty much true, isn't it? Not too far off, maybe.
Yeah, they do get nitpicky about stuff like that. Sure. And things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So people make up the dumbest reasons why they can't attend church, and then they call it persecution.
Yeah.
Like these people in this video. When it starts, you think it's going to be real, don't you?
Yeah.
They're serious. They say it's hard to talk about their crime. So do we in the American church even understand persecution? That's my question.
So,
Yeah, I'm sure some do, but as a whole, I don't think we really do we? We get upset about stupid things and complain and don't go to church. So all the disciples and the apostles lost their lives because of persecution, except John. Peter was crucified upside down during the time of Nero. He was crucified on Vatican Hill. I found this out researching. The modern day home of the Vatican in Rome. That's where Peter was crucified. Think about that for a minute. Not going to comment, just like think that's interesting. Peter preached against the gods of Rome and was martyred for preaching about Jesus. Mark was killed in Egypt by an angry pagan mob after he was arrested for preaching against idolatry. He was dragged through the streets with ropes tied around his neck. Paul was beheaded, also during the time of Nero. The only reason why he was not crucified was because he was a Roman citizen. So beheading was better, I guess. I don't know. More humane. Many Christians during this time were burned alive and used as human torches to light the city. So again, do we in the American church even understand persecution?
no, we do not.
No. So I just heard an interview where American pastor Alan Didio was interviewed a man who's with Voice of the Martyrs. Does anybody know Alan Didio? You heard of him or seen him? Okay. I heard him speak at a church in Nashville one time. He was phenomenal. Very passionate. So he was talking about smuggling Bibles into a closed country, and he was telling his friends and family he was going to do this, and they said, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You've got a wife, you've got kids. That's dangerous. What if you die?" And he's thinking, but think how exciting this is to do something great for Jesus like that. The Great Commission, right? Two different mindsets. The man at the Voice of the Martyrs said during this interview, he said, people all over the world face severe persecution every day, and they count it all joy when they're thrown into prison for the gospel. He told the story of going to a closed nation in Asia, I can't remember where, maybe China, talked to this lady who was a house church leader. She was in prison for a while, and he said, "Tell me about your experience." He thought he was going to go encourage her, cheer her up, and she smiled and told him about, all the great things that happened in prison, how she led all these people to Christ, had Bible studies, grew closer to Jesus. So it was kind of opposite of what we think. We're afraid of it, and they embrace it. So anyway, again, my question is, what's wrong with the American church? We just don't face that here. Not yet, do we? Not to that degree, anyway. So do we really think it's the end of the world when our family, friends, and coworkers make fun of us for being Christ followers, or when the communion elements aren't gluten-free, or they forget our birthday in the bulletin, or too warm or too cold in church? I knew a family in Wisconsin. They left their church because they didn't like the lighting during worship, and the music was too loud. And they complained and emailed, and nothing changed, so they left. Sit in the back. I just think you can't please everybody, right?
Don't try.
Don't try. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at some scriptures. That first one's Matthew 5:10-12. All right, whoever gets there first, if you want to read.
God bless those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God bless you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Be happy about it. Be very glad, for the great rewards await you in heaven. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way.
Okay, so how are we supposed to feel about persecution according to the scripture? Blessed if it happens, joyful, rejoice. Has anybody heard of Andrew Brunson, that pastor that was imprisoned in Turkey for 2 years? He and his wife were missionaries there. Okay. Recently, yeah. So, I was watching some interviews with him yesterday, and they were way too long to show, but the general idea I got from him talking about his time of being in prison was, it's coming here to America. We just better get prepared. We might be late to the party, but it's coming. And he said he never thought that he'd be imprisoned, even being in Turkey, being an American citizen, and he felt fairly safe. I had missionary friends that fled from Turkey years ago, so I'm not surprised. But he also said his first year in prison was really rough. He didn't feel the presence of God. And then it occurred to him, I'm not rejoicing in tribulation. The Bible says, count it all joy. I'm going to start doing this. So he said 5 minutes a day he would dance in his prison cell. I'm like, wow. Can you imagine? Can you imagine doing that by yourself in a prison cell, encouraging yourself in the Lord? Saying, why are you so downcast, oh my soul, hope in God, right? I mean, that's where it gets real. Yep. I can imagine. I had missionary friends that went on a trip to Turkey, and they were interrogated, and they were afraid they'd go to jail for preaching the gospel there. And a couple girls I was close to, I said, tell me about your time. Were you afraid? And they said, no, we were sitting in the waiting room, waiting to be interrogated and rejoicing that Jesus counted us worthy to go through this. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I guess God gives you the grace when you need it to go through that. Okay, let's look at 2 Timothy 2:12. You're there if you want to read it out loud, feel free.
If we endure, we will also reign with him. If we deny him, we will also deny us. He will also deny us.
Okay, if we endure, we shall also reign with him. If we deny him, he also will deny us. That's pretty clear, right? Stand strong till the end and you'll be saved. What happens if you give up early? Do you still get rewards for the things that you did before you screwed up?
No.
You got to finish the race. So if you're running a marathon and you fall down in the middle of it and quit, do you get a prize? No. In fact, you probably feel pretty discouraged and maybe feel kind of stupid or whatever, right? You're not going to get a prize. Okay, 2 Timothy 2:12. Who's there? Oh, we already read it. Sorry. We're on John 15:18-20. We're all over the place. Sorry. I just wrote them down as I found them. John 15:18-20. Taylor, you got that?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read it?
My time first predicted. The world hates you. Understand that it hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. However, because you are not of the world, but I have chosen you out of it, the world hates you. Remember the word I spoke to you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But let me keep going.
That's it. Okay, so if we're of the world, they love us, right?
Or not.
But because we're not, they hate us. We're different. There's a rub. So a few months ago, I got some messages about my high school show choir going to meet for the 50th anniversary, and they were going to sing and dance. Any alumni that wanted to come could. And I said, oh, Dave, that'd be fun. I should go, right? Well, then I thought, oh, that's a long way to go just for a Saturday event. And then my son's college graduation came up in May. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't make it. So they're sending me pictures. And I said to Dave, I think it was this morning, I said, that crowd is still the same wild, drinking, partying crowd as in high school. They met at a bar, you know, for their social time. And I'm like, I wouldn't have fit in very well. Like, nothing has changed with them, right? They're still in the world. They're still doing worldly things. If we're of the world, they're going to like us. If we're like them. If we're not like the world and we're like Jesus, they're going to hate us. We don't fit in. Get used to it. I said, Dave, I'm glad I didn't go. I don't think I would have fit. I would have been preaching and they probably would have been like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have to get used to being abnormal. Yeah. Be like Jesus, not the world, not like our family, not like our friends. Right? This is how it is. We should settle into that.
My 50th was just recently, and it was the same way. They met down and they were drinking. I didn't go.
Yeah, because when you're talking with that, it goes fast.
You know, that's why I'm with you, and I think it was you and I was talking about it, we went on this trip with my sister. And I was like, I don't think, I'll get in there. I don't do the things they do. I don't.
Right.
Know.
What do you have in common?
I don't think I fit in. I know my sisters and I love them.
Right.
I always love them, but I just don't fit in anymore. I mean, I've had one or two of them say, you're sick and love, you're a Jesus freak. I'm going to be a freak for Jesus than be a drug.
Well, what does darkness and light have in common, the Bible says? And that's what it's talking about. We don't have anything in common. Now, if I'm going with the idea I'm going to witness and that God says go, I'll go do it. Right? But just to hang out and try to fit in, it's not going to work. Yeah. Right. Oh, absolutely. So 1 Peter 4:12 through 14. You can go ahead and turn there and I'll read it because I'm there. Beloved, do not think it strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened to you. But rejoice to the extent that you partake of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory is revealed, you may also be glad with exceeding joy. If you are reproached for the name of Christ, blessed are you, for the Spirit of glory and of God rests upon you. On their part, he's blasphemed, but on your part, he's glorified. Again, just prepare for persecution. It's going to come, right? Don't think it's strange when this happens to you. But rejoice, because you're like Christ in this. Christ promised that we'd suffer. Be like him in our sufferings. That's what Paul says in Philippians. You relate to him in that.
It's so funny, this verse I've got written right here in my Bible, 1 Peter 4:12 through 19 on 8/1/2007. God directed me to these verses at a time when I was facing trials at court.
Wow.
I was church secretary.
Oh, wow. Anything you can share? You don't have to.
No, probably not.
Okay. That's interesting.
Maybe staff.
Yeah, sure. Now that you brought that up, I'll share something that happened. I don't know if I shared this at the prison to me. Because I taught cognitive behavior and they said, just write your own lesson plans. basically they didn't care what I taught as long as I did the class. And they checked it off the list for the guys that were going up for parole, and it wasn't run very well there. So they had to meet the requirement, just teach the class, figure it out. So I put scriptures in my lesson plans, and I said, you don't have to believe this, you don't have to accept it, it's what I believe, it's how I'm gonna teach it. You just have to sit through the class, believe it or not, you know? So I'm gonna teach it from a biblical perspective. I don't know how else to do that, and most guys are okay with it. One time I had a bunch of Muslim guys and gang leaders in my class who were not having it. And anyway, there was a lady in my class observing me that day. She had been fired for drugs, and I was the one who noticed she was impaired for several days in a row and turned her in, and the investigators walked her out in handcuffs. Well, sure enough, here she comes back. I hired her back, and my new supervisor didn't know what happened, and she said, she's going to observe in your class today. I'm like, oh my gosh. I should have gone and told her. But anyway, when these guys started acting up, I said, you know, I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to put Miss Graves in charge, and I'm going to use the bathroom and come back. When I was gone, she basically said, you had every right to act up. Miss Montgomery's not a good teacher. She shouldn't be teaching about God. You name it. And so I felt persecuted. Not to the degree of these people that have died, but I felt like, oh, what do you want me to do here, right? So it was not fun. And I said, God, well, I'm not going to stop teaching scriptures in my classroom. And a couple supervisors came and said, hey, we heard you're teaching the Bible in your classroom. I said, I mentioned scriptures and say that that's what I believe, and you don't have to believe it. They're like, well, just tone it down a little bit. I said, okay. But God, what do you want me to do? Either I change jobs or they become more friendly to what I'm doing here. Well, here I am. That was my out.
This here?
Yeah. But,
Lucky woman.
you know, there,
What do you think, brother?
and I could have lost my life for that there, just to be real honest. In that prison, it was so dangerous and so volatile. What I did is I kicked all those guys out of my class. And I just gave them their packets. I said, finish your homework in your cells, turn it in every day, sign in, and go back to your classroom. You can't sit in my class. And the whole atmosphere of the class changed. And we got back on track, and I could teach the gospel in there, and everybody was receptive. But even in America, there are people that are not receptive. Not to the degree where we're going to be beheaded or crucified, but, you know, we're still paying a price. Those of us who want to be serious about the gospel. Right? And I felt like that was persecution. That was pretty intense, you know? So anyway, I don't know what you faced at work, but we are facing some things to some degree. Okay, so, and there was a staff member that was afraid for my life. So he would come and stand by my door while these guys would march in, get their homework, sign their name, and leave. So it was a little intense, but it was worth it. I forgot where we're at. Okay, Romans 8:35 through 37. So if somebody gets there first, they can read that. I agree with the guy who was smuggling Bibles, though, into an Asian country. Like, every day was exciting to go to work. I never knew it was going to happen. Even though it was dangerous, it was a very exciting job because I knew that I was on the front lines, you know? You got it, Taylor?
I got a girl.
Raise your hand. Look at you. Okay.
Who could, okay, start at 135.
35 through 37.
Who can separate us from the love of Christ? In affliction, distress, persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or danger, or sword, as it is written, because we are being put to death all day long. We are counted as sheep to the slaughter.
Okay. Yet in all these things we're more than conquerors through him who loved us. So what do you think it means? For your sake we are killed all day long. We are counted as sheep for the slaughter. You think it really means we're dying a physical death, or does it mean something else? I'm asking you because I'm not sure. I'm just, some are. Do you think there's a lot of dying to yourself when you're a Christian? Yeah. There better be. Right, you're never gonna make it through this, are you? You're not gonna make it to the end of the marathon if you're not dying to yourself every day.
What did you all say? We got a
Yeah, yeah, I think that's what it means. We should be on that cross daily, right? And carrying our cross that Jesus has given us to carry and bear every day. And I think that's how we're different than the world. I literally, it's so weird. I worked with a couple pastors and a lady who's been a missionary. And so I would talk to them thinking that we're all on the same page, right? The one that was most on the same page with me, and a couple of them were of a very conservative denomination I won't mention. So not that that's bad, but that's a difference in thinking. So the one who was the most on the same page with me was my friend, Mr. Allen. He was covered in tattoos and he got radically saved and he became a pastor. So we'd sit and talk about all the miracles happening in our classrooms, and we sit there and cry at lunchtime, and he'd come in my room and pray through it with me, and I'd go in his room and pray through it with him, you know, and I'd start to tell this to another guy who'd been a pastor of a conservative denomination. He'd laugh at me. I'd show Courageous and Grace Card, and these guys would sit there and cry. I'd show these Christian movies and these big old murderers, drug dealers, they'd sit there and cry. And some of my coworkers would be like, you never believe it out in my classroom. And they'd make fun of me. A couple guys would laugh at mine and make fun of me. And this pastor would always be like, you do the right thing, Miss Montgomery. And I got off on a ringtone. But I said it. All right, let's just say it. There are two camps of Christians, like the serious and the nominal, right? I even saw that teaching in a prison. If you were a serious Christian, what the heck are you doing teaching in a prison where you could lose your life? The worst men's prison in Tennessee. Oh, this is where I was going with this. So this pastor was real conservative. We're walking in one day and the gate shut behind us, and I said, you know, I realize that every day I come in here, I have to lose my life, and I'm okay with that. If today's my last day, at least I'm doing what God's calling me to do. He goes, don't say that. Why did you say that or think like that? Why would you think like that? Why would you not think like that? Right? Why don't we think like that? I thought like that in public school every time we did an active shooter drill or, you know, there's something going on in the area, you're going to go on lockdown or, you know what I'm saying? Well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm taking care of these kids. So we better make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do with our life. Jesus comes back and find us faithful. If we lose our life, we're supposed to lose it. Do you know what I'm saying? You need to be doing your assignment. And then it's going to be okay.
Kid down here on Elkhorn Creek, Wrangler place backed up to the creek. It is a big old garden I help her with. At least once, usually more than once, every summer, we would get some inner tubes or floaties or whatever, use an inner tube. We'd go down there in the creek, we'd sit down on that inner tube, and we'd just float on, you know. It was nice. Didn't require much effort. Cool, you know, hot summer days. Hear the birds singing, people laughing, having a good time. But then there was two ways you could get back to my grandma's house. You could take the inner tube out, walk all the way across the field and cross the road and everything. Or you could do like we like to do. We'd get down to the falls where it got dangerous. We'd pick our tubes up and we'd walk back the creek. But the thing was, when you walk back the creek, you were walking against the current. Things weren't so easy then. And then all of a sudden it was everything that was going with you was going against you, you know? And if you wasn't careful, like if your inner tube got down in that current, especially the current, they start yanking on you, pull you down. It took a lot of effort to go back up the stream, but it was worth it,
Yeah.
you know. I think that's the thing is Christians had this idea that Christianity is floating down the stream on the inner tube. You know, that you're, everything's, yeah. I mean, the idea, and truthfully, you know, that satirical little video really has it pegged because, you know, I mean, the worst I've ever suffered outside of, you know, massive tongue lashing and all that kind of stuff is I've had a tomato smash in my face twice, you know. And make no mistake, when it happened, I wanted to thump the guy, you know. And I looked at him first, I was a young Christian too. And I looked at the guy and I told him, I said, you better thank God Jesus loves you. That's what I told him.
Goodbye.
I wanted to thump his noggin, you know. But I thought to myself, you know, literally, you know, what would Jesus have me do in this situation? Should I retaliate? You know, when you go upstream, everything coming downstream hits you right square in the face. You know, so we all have times of rest. Even Jesus had times of rest, but those are the exceptions to the rule. The rule is that you're always going against the grain.
Examine.
Yeah, you're always going upstream. It's always a fight. You know, the things that I want to do, you know, that would make my flesh happy or my mind happy or my body happy. I don't do those things. You know, we've had a hard week this week. Little sleep. We were out late last night. You know, sleeping in this morning would have been easy. Just stay in bed. You know, skip. And listen, I'm just going to say it, you know, and I'd like to say I don't have anybody in mind. I do have several people in mind say this, you know, not just here. You know, it's like, I can make any excuse in the world. You know? I mean, I even said that as a pastor here probably about 3 years ago. I said, let me ask congregation a question. I said, if I showed up for Sunday morning service and then not for Sunday evening, and then showed up for Thursday, and the next week I showed up for Sunday night. That was it. Next week I showed up for Thursday and Sunday morning. What would you think about me? And Dora was the first one to speak up. She'd say, there's something wrong. I said, that's a good observation. I said, so there's something wrong. And everybody kind of looked at me. I said, how many of us in here do that very same thing? We just pick and choose, you know, don't feel, you know, we can make it to work. We can make it to our hobbies.
We have to go to work.
Absolutely, you know, it's funny how that's, you know, it's just that whole mentality and spirituality. It's not just a mentality, it's a spirituality. That whole type of spirituality. And it's just biblically. And I'm not saying if you know, even if I work, we're not going to be here next Thursday night, we'll in another place, you know. But long story short, it's about when I'm allowing what I want to predominate over what should be doing service. You know, and truthfully, you know, people want you to validate, Christians want you to validate what they do. You know, oh, hey, it's an Easter egg. Oh, I can do that. You know, well, let's celebrate some, you know, evil holiday. No, I'm not going to do that. You know, and it's not that I'm looking at somebody going, oh, you're, you know, the devil in disguise. I'm just saying, hey, you know, once I come to the knowledge about something, I'm held to that accountability standard. And I'm not just held to that accountability standard when I learn it, I'm held for the rest of my life to that accountability standard. And that's the thing that people don't get is like, a lady looked at us one time, we were talking about marriage and divorce biblically several of us. She listened for about 15 minutes. We were talking scripture and everything. She had a aunt who had unbiblically divorced her husband and remarried. She looked, she goes, well, I have a question. Isn't there like a statute of limitations? Now, to her credit, once she said it, she realized how stupid it sounded, you know, because all of us just kind of give her the, well, you know, she realized, she goes, never mind, I'll withdraw the question. And I'm sure in her mind, see, that's what we do. We justify in our own mind. that what I'm doing and how to, oh, they didn't speak to me, I'm being so persecuted, give you a floating word.
Get over it.
Wait till somebody stands in your face and calls you, half a dozen bad words, bigoted idiot, then come talk to them. You say part. That's a good one.
Because they already know Jesus is with you.
If you want to be crazy for people, so let's go on Sunday morning, oh, 79, or you can't do that. You stand in front of God. You can answer for all that. You think you ain't, but you are. I guarantee you that's what you're going to say.
And what we're talking
You
about,
don't know him, you can't be for it.
I like Jim's shirt. I just noticed it. Eyes on the prize.
what we're talking about is spiritual attitude. We're talking about a lifestyle.
Not that you can't miss church. It's just
Man,
what's important to
when
me.
I came up off of that softball field after my salvation, my entire attitude changed. I mean, there was no question in my mind, something radical happened in my mindset. I still had the same clothes on, I still look the same, same person. Judy was that same way too. I think most Christians, whether it happens immediately or over time, it does happen both ways. If you're not being changed, if I'm not being changed, if I'm not being challenged to change, either I've arrived at perfection, which is highly doubtful, or something's wrong.
The guy in the video, the second guy said, I don't like feeling convicted.
Yeah, don't convict.
I know if I do something, but right in there, I don't get that feeling. I'm overfit for it. I mean, but it's not just in this building that we have to stay. It's at home with God and being in your personal time with Him and spending your time with Him.
Right.
If you're on the bingo every night, instead of being in the Word of God, it's not gonna work.
This video, that guy goes, I'm like, really?
Did you hear what he said, Jim? He goes, my kids were at youth group and they weren't teaching them about Jesus. I'm like, buddy, the youth pastor's John. He's supposed to come alongside you. All right, so I'm gonna read the next one because I was just looking at it and I want to read a little bit more. But Acts 14, I'm going to start in 19 and read through 22. Then the Jews from Antioch and Iconium came there, and having persuaded the multitudes, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing him to be dead. Was he dead? No, because later he got beheaded. Lord have mercy, he got stoned and he didn't die. However, when the disciples gathered around him, he rose up and went into the city. What do you think they did when they gathered around him? Probably laid hands on him and prayed, right? Or spoke words of life to him. And the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. Oh my gosh, he gets stoned, and the next day he goes with Barnabas, probably to preach the gospel. And when they had preached the gospel, there we go, to that city and made many disciples, they returned to Lystra, Iconium, and Antioch. What did they do then, after Paul got stoned? They strengthened the souls of the disciples, exhorting them to continue in the faith and saying, we must through many tribulations enter the kingdom of God. What the heck? Okay, so Paul gets stoned, and then God raises him back up, preaches the gospel, then encourages the other Christians to keep going. So I don't know about you, but I'm looking at Paul being stoned, and I'm one of the women followers. I'm like, dang, is this my future? Probably. Why would they be so stupid to keep doing this? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, look, why would they do that? Look how God brought him back. That's where you should be looking at.
That's good. Different
And
perspective.
realizing that God is with us no matter what we go through.
That's really good. So our lives are in God's hands, where they should be. Right? If we perish, we perish. We know where we're going. To live is Christ, to die is gain. Doesn't matter. That's what I told my friend in prison. Doesn't matter if I die in here, because I know I'm doing God's will. But if I make it out today, I'll be back tomorrow to do it again. And he thought I was the weirdest person. The same guy was the ex-pastor of a Christian denomination. By the way, he had cheated on his wife and lost his pastorate, and so he had to come and be a teacher at the prison. Good guy, and we all make mistakes, but some things going on there. He was in my classroom with me one day, and I was decorating it for the next class, and he sat down and he said, "Have you seen any miracles?" I said, "Yeah." So we began to talk about it. It was so funny how we built that relationship, and he heard me talk, and he wanted to know, "Have you seen miracles?" Right? So keep on living your life in front of people, and it will open doors.
Just yesterday, I got a call from somebody from my path that wanted to talk. I said, "Hey, you get a minute, call me." It's a little late that night, and we were eating dinner. I said, "Well, I'll do it tomorrow." So I called them. And long story short, they spent about 10 minutes telling me that having watched my life for so many years, and their statement was, they said, "Through everything that just I saw you go through, I know you went through other things, your faith has not wavered." And that's encouraged me not to waver. And even when I did waver, they said it encouraged me to just pick myself up and realize more to it on, you know. Now, that's not something about me. That's just what God does in somebody that'll just surrender themselves to him. And I told the person, I said, "Well," I said, if it's all about us as individuals, I said, we're gonna fail. I said, "But we'll listen to God." I said, "He will provide a way for us to just, keep going, But I mean, we don't do it for that reason, but Paul made a statement. He said that a lot of people were emboldened by his life, by the things that he did. He's the one that made the statement, "What a huge wildfire, a little spark will start." If you'll just do that and don't do it for that reason, you do it because you're supposed to be loyal to God, and then leave those consequences up to him. But that's the natural side effect, is that it will encourage or it'll convict them, one of the two, because he kind of talked about that a little bit, mentioned a couple of things that he.
What example we're being to people by living our lives the right way. They're watching it. See if they match.
We found that out from our neighbor across the street. Great little lady, we love her.
She observes us and tells us what we've been doing. I'm like, oh gosh.
Great to know.
Yeah. I'm glad we're behaving. So Matthew 10:22. We could read this whole passage, but I'm just going to read the last scripture. "And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, but he who endures to the end will be saved." Like Jim's shirt, eyes on the prize, right? You endure to the end, you'll be saved, and you're going to be hated. So just settle into it. If you want to be like Jesus, that's the plan. Let's turn to Philippians 1:29. Hopefully my computer will not die.
Did you plug it in?
No, I didn't bring I thought we were going to print off my talk, and I didn't bring my cord.
What'd you say, Philippians
129. You want to read that, Mr. Brantley?
"For unto you it is given on the behalf of Christ, not only to believe on him, but also to suffer for his name's sake."
Okay, you get to believe in him and you get to suffer. Look at that. Woohoo, right? Yeehaw.
Well, you think about in Acts, the same Sanhedrin court that hung Jesus on the cross, they beat the crap out of some of the apostles, and they came out of there rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer persecution for his name's sake.
So I think the Holy Spirit gives a lot of grace when you're being martyred, because everybody has the same story, right? He has to fill you with even more of his Spirit at that point, or you can't do it. It's humanly impossible. But you also have to be filling yourself up now to prepare for that. To allow him to get you ready. So 2 Corinthians 12:10. Anybody have that?
Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecution, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Okay. So,
And his mindset had to be changed.
right.
All of it.
The only thing I think about, if I face persecution, how am I going to get through it? So how many of us have had babies in here? 3 of us women. Yeah. Okay, all I can think is you're having intense labor pains. You're giving birth to your child and it's painful, but you just keep thinking, I can do this because the baby's coming. It's going to be worth it. So I'm thinking when I go through persecution, if I have to, okay, it's going to be painful for a little bit, but then I'm going to see him. It's going to be worth it. I'll be there soon, right? Don't grow weary in well doing, for in due time you'll reap a harvest if you don't give up. That's what I think I would have to think. I don't know, but it's not going to be easy.
Well, pregnancy, I mean, when you're in it, you gotta go through it.
Well, that's true. There
You
ain't gonna
can't,
get out.
you can't just say, no, I changed my mind, because, no,
Well,
it's
we can,
happening.
but we wouldn't.
It's happening, yeah.
Yeah,
So you have to go through it, you have no choice. So,
you can just think, I have no choice. If I'm a follower,
well,
of
I'm
Christ,
trying to do it. I don't know if you were in a hell persecution, you would have no choice. Go through it, so now, after, in prison, something.
Can't get out.
Go through it.
it's true, like these pastors that go to prison.
Just go through it.
Yeah, do it well.
Mhm.
It's gotta be on. There's no easy news in it, is there? Except the end will be good. The end will be good. Delayed gratification.
But don't concentrate on only the persecution. Keep your eye on Christ and what you're doing for him and the glory that will come out of it. Don't think of, and then God will bring you through.
Right. No, I like your perspective.
Mhm.
All right, who's got Hebrews 11?
I'll share something
Yeah.
before we get to this. When I got pregnant with Jonathan, I went into labor 6 weeks early
Oh, gosh.
and they couldn't get me to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So they raced me up the interstate to Norton's in Louisville because they thought he was going to be so premature.
Okay.
And so I delivered him. It was a hard delivery. So I was in bad shape and he was in the NICU.
Yeah.
I got to come home a few days later. He had to stay.
Yeah, that's right.
So that was rough.
Yeah.
A year or two later, I wanted another one, and my gynecologist was saying, don't risk it. You may not be so lucky the next time.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I want another child. We want another child. And he said, well, prepare yourself. You may lay in bed for half of your pregnancy. And I said, I don't care. In God's hands, I don't care.
Yeah.
And so it took me a few years, but I did get pregnant again. And sure enough, went into labor in December. She wasn't due till March.
Oh, man.
So, while on my back, I went.
Right.
I could get up long enough to go to the bathroom and to take a quick shower
Mm-hmm.
and then back to bed. I mean, flat on my
For 3
bed
months.
for 3 months. And I had to take a pill every 4 hours to keep me from going into labor.
Wow.
And, you know, it did not affect my mind at all. You know, I just kept praying, Lord, just let me carry her and,
Yeah.
you know, let her be healthy.
Here she is.
And yeah, here she is.
Right. And it was worth it. You knew the price you had to pay and you paid it.
It was worth
So do you think we can apply that to our Christian life? Just realize the price I have to pay and be willing to pay it and it'll be fine. Yeah. Just realize we're going to have to pay some kind of price. All right. Hebrews 11, 35 through 38. Anybody there? All right.
they're dead, raised to life again. Other people were tortured, not accepting release, so that they may gain a better resurrection. Doesn't work. Am I on the right one?
So let me look here.
Okay. Others experienced mocking and
Yeah.
forgings, as well as bonds and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, they died by the sword, they wandered about in sheepskin and goat skins, destitute, afflicted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and on mountains, hiding in caves and holes in the ground.
Yeah, what do we think about that? There's promised persecution. It's talking about great people of faith, what they had to go through. Sometimes it's not fun, it's not easy, but it'll be worth it, right? We just, like George said, we just have to settle in. But, and just assume you're going to be martyred. Just assume we're in the last stage. Just assume it'll be hard. And if it's not, hooray. But if we just assume we'll have to go through something for him, we'll be pleasantly surprised if we don't. Right? That's how I think. So a few years ago, I attempted to move back to my hometown in Illinois. Because I was vocal about my faith, I was told by two pastors when I visited their church that I was not welcome to attend there. In fact, no joke, they both said, if you ever come back here again, we'll call the police and have you removed. And I'm like, what the heck did I do? One was a pretty conservative denomination, one was a charismatic denomination, so it didn't have anything to do with that. And I could tell you stories that more in depth than that, but I tried to rent an apartment in my hometown. Small towns people talk. And so I had this apartment secured, family friend owned the apartment. He's like, sure, I'll rent to you. Well, then he called me and said, hey, I can't rent to you. And I said, you must know Pastor so-and-so. Of course he did. His brother went to that church. I'm like, okay, God, I guess I'm not living in Illinois. So I fasted and prayed because I had 3 job offers there. No apartment in church. And the Lord said, Illinois is good, but Nashville is better. So, exactly, Romans 8:28. All the things work together for good for those who love God and follow according to his purposes. But it was interesting how many assignments, prayer assignments and things I had in town while I was there for the month trying to move there. But then that was it. And I was moved on. So I wouldn't be here.
Like I told you guys were meant to be together, so you'd have met somewhere else. It wasn't, if you weren't in that.
She might be right. You might have drove to Illinois, who knows?
You may have made a trip up here for something, and you ran into him.
You could pull me. You could fly. See, we're trying to get two friends together that are only 3 hours apart. I don't think that's too far. If you're watching this. Right, exactly. So, okay, so God has a purpose in persecution. Right? There's always a purpose in persecution. We may not see it at the time. They thought, what am I doing wrong? And it happened that one of the pastors owned a coffee shop, and I was in the coffee shop, and there was a gentleman who probably had really bad Alzheimer's who was saying, I think I'll move in here. I'll do this, and I'll take that. And I said, so you should probably leave now. And he said, you think so? I said, yeah. I got told for doing that, and I thought that was a good thing. Anything I thought I was doing right, they said I was doing wrong. So it had to be God closing the doors. I mean, it got ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Well, we have had thinking that bad things are bad, bad things aren't always bad, so bad things are good. And sometimes good things are bad, you know?
Acting up. That closed the door for me to be there. And I'm like, well, Dave, maybe I should just move it. Get in a start attending a church, get a job, and just settle in. There he lived in Judy, and the rest is history, right? Yeah, that was my free moment. So yeah, you just never know what God's doing. He'll use persecution for his glory, for his purposes. He'll teach you where he wants to, right?
That's very
church persecution too. Now, let's just be honest. All right, so a parent looks at a child and says, I need you to clean your room. Child will do it. I need you to clean your room. Child will do it. If you don't clean your room, there's gonna be consequences. Child, that's the time they ever looked over and said, you know, until finally the parent walks into the room with a belt or a hat or says, okay, you're gonna do it, and here, this is gonna be your motivation. Well, Jesus told the people to go preach the word to the world. So what did they do? They went into Jerusalem and wouldn't leave. And so persecution hit them real hard. And this is the cool thing, this is multi-tiered. Where did the bulk of the persecution come from? Well, it was centered around a single man by the name of Saul. Saul became the leading persecutor of the church at Jerusalem, which in turn drove them out of Jerusalem, which they were supposed to do in the first place. And at the same time, ended up playing into his life and him getting saved, while someone else by the name of Stephen becomes the first martyr. I mean, all of this stuff happens in succession, all because of persecution. The persecution isn't, I mean, it's tough. I'll grant you that. It sucks. I get that 100%. I don't ever see anybody say that it's, you know, that it's lovely to go through. It doesn't say they rejoice, you know, in being beaten. They rejoice that they were allowed to suffer. You know, the thing we go through often stinks, but why we go through, that's the difference. And knowing that God can work that together like that, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're still humans too, and a lot of them things that go through really is
Yeah.
It's just
Well, yeah.
little trial, and God knows any picture you have to giggling like, oh, but you know.
Well, and then of course, like this, the self-proclaimed martyrs. You know, you do something wrong biblically, God punishes you for it, and then you have the audacity to go, like, you're not suffering for your faith, you're suffering for being an idiot. Just like you've done, just like most of us have done. You're suffering for your sin. Now, God will still use it. I grant you that 100%. But don't confuse the two, you know. If you're walking disorderly, then God's gonna do something with it. You know, because he loves us. That's what he does. That's not suffering for your faith, that's suffering for your lack of it.
Yeah. Well, in Matthew chapter 10, Jesus is speaking to his disciples. Verse 1 says, and when he had called his 12 disciples to him, he gave them power over unclean spirits to cast them out and heal all kinds of sickness and disease. So he's giving them authority to do these great things and help people, right? Then in verse 16, he begins to talk to them about persecution. So 16 to 23, I'll read that too, we're running out of time. Behold, I send you out as sheep in the midst of wolves. Therefore be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But beware of men, for they will deliver you up to the councils and scourge you in their synagogues. You will be brought before governors and kings for my sake as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, do not worry about how or what you should speak, for it will be given to you in that hour what you should speak. For it is not who you speak, or it is not you who speaks, sorry, my context recording, but the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. Now, brother will deliver up brother to death, and a father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all for my name's sake, which we read earlier. But he who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in this city, flee to another. For assuredly I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So we're promised persecution. And if we look at the next verse, the disciple's not above his teacher, or a servant above his master. So we're not any different than him, so we're going to go through it, right? At the beginning of this chapter, Jesus gave his followers the authority to deal with evil spirits and sickness. Then he tells them that they may have to give their lives for him. If I'd been a disciple, I think I would have been excited and fearful. Oh, we're going to cast out demons and heal the sick. Oh, we might die. You know what I mean? It's like this double-edged sword. Take the bad with the good, right? The God of the universe entrusted them with great gifts and abilities, but he also demanded their lives from them. So it's exciting, thrilling, fun. It's also petrifying. We could be in fear, fleeing for our lives, hiding. It's good and bad. It's exciting and crazy and right? Like, I don't know, it's a mixed bag. One day it could be great, the next day we could be hiding. Just like when Jesus was crucified, right? Can you imagine? They're hiding for their lives. One day they're following Jesus, then he's dead, then they're hiding. I'd just be like, oh, what's going on here? Like you'd have all these emotions. So we may be called to lose our lives for the gospel. Charlie Kirk knew the price that he was paying when he spoke so openly about Jesus. He had a lot of death threats. Dietrich Bonhoeffer knew that he could lose his life if he stood up against Hitler. He did it, and he paid the price. Martin Luther King Jr. received death threats because he stood up for the rights of Black people. They all thought their cause was worth the risk, and they were all called to die for their beliefs. They were ultimately killed for being believers in Jesus and for standing up for what was right. So are we ready to do that?
Should be.
We got to ask ourselves that.
Be.
No, we got to get ready, right?
Screaming.
If we're not ready, we need to get ready. So Dave, you want to play that second video? And I made it, my computer. 23%.
You're at 23%.
I did it. Hallelujah.
You did, didn't you? Good job. Good job, man.
So,
Most of us live like relatively free from persecution because of our faith. There are many who do not. For as long as Christianity has existed, there have been those persecuted because of it, even today. In order for us to know how persecution affects us today, we must know how it has manifested itself across history. Beginning around a year after Jesus' death and resurrection, the Apostle Stephen was stoned to death because of his faith. In fact, nearly all the apostles paid the price of their life for their faith. 64 AD, the Roman Empire, led by Nero, began the first recorded systematic torturing and murder of Christians. This was the first time the governing body enacted persecution of Christians. Around 100 years later, Christians were killed in vast quantities for refusing to renounce their faith. It was not uncommon at this time for Christians to be robbed, assaulted, or even stoned. 250 AD, all Christians were commanded to sacrifice to Roman gods or face immediate execution. The persecution continued until Constantine came to power in 300 AD and legalized Christianity. 717 AD, the Pact of Weimar was enacted. While giving Christians certain rights, it brought a large list of restrictions and dangers. This pact forbade Christians from publicly displaying crosses and rebuilding churches after they 1300 AD, Ptolemy, a ruler at the time of Persia and Central Asia, conducted massacres of Christians on a wide scale in Mesopotamia, Persia, Asia Minor, and Syria. 1600 AD, the Emperor of China banned Christianity for over 100 years. 1850 AD, in Madagascar, the Queen prohibited the practicing of Christianity. It's estimated that over 100,000 died as a result. 1915 AD, Ottoman army troops enacted a large massacre of Christian populations in Anatolia, Persia, and northern Mesopotamia regions. 1917 AD, after a political change in Russia, tens of thousands of churches were destroyed or repurposed. This resulted in the murder of over 500,000 Orthodox Christians in the 20th century. Beginning in 1983, Christians in Sudan were under attack. Some estimates put the number of those martyred at over 1 million, with many displaced. Present day, Christians are facing growing levels of persecution on the continents of Africa and Asia. There are many countries where being Christian is punishable by death, several where it is punishable by significant time in prison, and even more where attempting to convert someone to Christianity is a crime. For as long as Christianity has existed, there have been those persecuted because of it. While Christianity can often seem like a safe choice to us, there are many who live or identify with Christ and is putting your life in severe danger. What would you be willing to risk for your faith in Christ?
I think it's pretty safe to say if we don't stand up for Christ here, the Muslims are gonna take over. They've already taken over Britain. They have a big influence in Europe, Minnesota, Michigan.
Michigan, Minnesota, up north.
I heard they might
Well,
be.
I will say this, and I just watched this yesterday. You know, New York just got its first openly Muslim governor. Did you see what he said yesterday?
You mean mayor?
Or mayor, I mean.
Yeah.
Did you see what he said? They are now going to tax white people more than they tax everybody else.
Well, that's not racist.
Oh, that's the kicker. Because the white people have been systematically racist, they're going to tax them more so that they can give it back to everybody else. But they're not being racist. And it's on national news yesterday. Now, watch now. How long will it take to go from white people to Christians? How long will it take with him being openly Muslim?
Well, that's starting already, because like with the elections coming up even in 2028, I get a lot, like with President Trump and all my get, you know, well, I've been getting from all these senators and junk. They're all like, should Christianity be the main religion in America? And you have to vote, you know, put your vote in. Should Muslim religion be the main one or be allowed, you know, and then you have to vote whether you want yes or no. I'm getting a lot of questions, like, you know, should it be that, should that, you know, and you have to keep voting whether or not sign this petition, sign that petition.
Right.
Whatever. And a lot of it is where they're saying, you know, about should Muslims be allowed to wear the mask thing, you know?
Sharia law.
Yeah.
I watched the testimony a week ago from an ex-Muslim who became Christian. And he was a very devout Muslim for many years. And he said, let me be clear. He said, the Muslim ideology, mainstream Muslim ideology, is to take over the world. He said, that's what we're doing. He said, and much like the kingdoms before us, we'll do it either by force through Sharia law, or we'll do it by subtlety. And they said, for example, in America, the Muslim mainline has found all they need to do is back the non-conservative side, which in this case is the Democrats. They said, now make no mistake, Muslims do not believe in homosexuality and all of that different thing, but we will back them so that it will degrade and deteriorate the American society and structure. And at the same time, we will come in and assimilate, which we're already doing. Now, this is coming from a man who was inside of this organization many, many years, and now he's speaking out as a born-again Christian about what they're doing.
The radical.
Yeah.
I mean, because I watched a video yesterday about Iran, and an Iranian man said Iran is only about 1/3 Muslim. Most of the people in Iran don't believe in being Muslim. You know, they're either Christian or some other religion, or they're atheists. Nothing. But that presence is so strong. It's in politics. It's everywhere. So they run the countries, but it's not predominant thought there. So I had in my notes, I think I erased it by accident, but the law that just got passed in Canada about hate speech. You can't read scriptures about homosexuality. The penalty for that is 10 years in prison if you read scriptures out loud about homosexuality, because that's hate speech.
You can't stand within, I think, 1,000 yards of a public building, abortion clinic or anything, with your head bowed for 5 years in prison.
Yeah.
Is that in Canada?
They're getting back.
Just yesterday, the other day, they had the news like, in the Iran of the people that are a bunch of Muslim people in there, and they're asking if they're Muslim or not, and they've been killing people. If they say they're not Muslim, they've been killing the people that are the protesters.
Well,
Right.
the big fans in Minnesota, that's all the Muslim community. That's predominantly Muslim. And look at the billions that are built. And then you turn around and you go out west and you see what's going on in California with that moron that's reading that, what he's doing, you know. And it's like,
you better start putting the pieces together real quick. Now, the upside is we got some senators and congressmen and congresswomen that are seeing what's going on. And they're actually saying, you better look at Europe, you better look at the UK and see what's happened to them because they're trying to bring it here. Now, thank God for people like Donald Trump because he's shutting it down. He's saying this is going to stop.
Well, we can't be tolerant. I think a lot of Americans are thinking, we need to be tolerant and love them and let them do their thing, but they're taking over. You know, if they want to do their thing, go back to their original country, right? So, and I was thinking also, I had a friend who went on a mission trip to China, and he met with Chinese house churches, and so they didn't get caught. They would literally mouth the words of worship songs, and he's looking around thinking, wow. You know, in America, we can sing freely and raise our hands. We have instruments. There's a church on every corner. The persecuted church is paying the price. They could be killed or in prison, yet they're still meeting in secret. They're worshiping, they're praying, they're reading the scriptures. Man, so these people pay a high price. Anyway, I felt like that's what I should teach about because it's not here, we think it's not coming. Because Jesus hasn't come, some people think he's not coming. It just hasn't happened yet.
My wife, we may have to do. As a church. When it's coming.
Yeah.
When it comes.
Being hard for maybe one of the yesterday, we and they appreciate that. And I was there and said, I really don't care. I don't follow you over there.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's what we have to do. You know, we just have to say, and what I believe. You know, I'm gearing up because I'm going to Wisconsin to see my family in May, and I'm just thinking, okay, it may be like that there. You know, I might just have to stand strong in my faith and not care what they say. This is what we got to do. So, who would like to pray and end this? Judy?
You're really fun. Thank you today. Thank you. Be nice and thankful. If the other day this community, I look at it. I have worked for and see. I love you, Lord. I hope everybody knows you, and loves you, and loves you. You know, Lord, just stand with us and we stand up for you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
When you get not sure for free.
You got this, guy?
You have to get the end. Don't mess it up, girl.